Welcome back to the podcast to Philippe, and today we're diving deep into the world of AI.
Oh, very exciting.
And we're asking a question that I think a lot of people have pondered, with the rise of things like ChatGPT and Siri and all these, seemingly intelligent systems.
Yeah.
Can AI truly understand us, or is it just really good at mimicking human conversation?
Well, that's a great question. And I think one of the first things to remember is that how AI understands things
Right.
is very different than how we as humans understand things.
Yeah.
Even these advanced AIs that we have today, they don't really grasp meaning the way that we do.
Okay.
They're much better at sort of looking at patterns and making predictions based on huge amounts of data.
So, it's more about statistical probability than actual comprehension.
Yeah, exactly.
So, if I ask an AI to write me a poem,
Right.
it's not like it's drawing on any personal experience or emotion.
Exactly.
It's just pulling from, this massive database of text and arranging words in a way that kind of statistically resembles poetry.
Yeah, it's like if you were to give a really complicated math equation to a calculator.
Okay.
The calculator can solve the equation,
Right.
but it doesn't really understand the concepts behind the equation.
I see what you're saying.
Right. And it's similar with AI.
Yeah.
It's manipulating these symbols, but it doesn't have that deeper understanding.
Okay, so that makes sense. And, it makes me think of that classic riddle from Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, yeah.
Why is a raven like a writing desk?
Right.
An AI could probably go out and find the quote unquote correct answer, even though Lewis Carroll never really intended for there to be one.
Right, exactly. And that kind of highlights that difference between simulation and consciousness.
Yeah.
Because for us as humans,
Yeah.
Our understanding is based on lived experience, our senses, emotion, the memories.
Right.
AI doesn't have any of that.
So it's just manipulating these symbols without having the subjective experience that we have.
Exactly.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of John Searle's Chinese room thought experiment.
Oh, yeah, the classic one.
Yeah, where, a person can manipulate these Chinese symbols to answer questions correctly,
Right.
but without actually understanding the language.
Right. It's just following a set of rules.
Yeah.
And that's very much how AI operates.
Yeah, it's almost like an actor studying a script.
Right.
They can portray emotions convincingly, but they don't necessarily feel those emotions themselves.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like AI is doing that, but with language.
Yeah, it's it's creating this illusion of understanding,
Mm-hmm.
but when you really dig deeper, it's not quite there yet.
Right, and that kind of leads to these interesting things that we've seen pop up, like AI hallucinations.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, it seems like, when AI generates information, that's not really based in reality.
Right.
It's like it's making things up, essentially.
Yeah, and that's because, again, it's relying so heavily on these patterns and probabilities
Right.
that sometimes it can just kind of go off the rails and fabricate things.
It's almost like it's filling in the blanks of a story
Right.
without any concern for whether it's actually true or not.
Exactly. Yeah, and that can be a little unsettling.
Yeah, definitely, because, we're increasingly relying on AI for information and decision-making.
And that's where things get a little tricky.
Yeah, so I think this really highlights, the limitations of AI, even though its ability to mimic human conversation is really impressive.
Yeah, it's come a long way.
But simulation isn't the same as genuine understanding.
No, it's not.
And it kind of raises this fundamental question. Can consciousness itself be replicated in an algorithm?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah. Is it solely a matter of computation? Or is there something more? Something uniquely human that can't be captured in code?
That's a question philosophers and scientists have been debating for centuries.
Yeah.
And now with AI, it's becoming even more relevant.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's something that we need to think about carefully as we continue to develop this technology.
Absolutely.
And speaking of limitations, we've touched on this idea of simulation versus consciousness. But let's delve a little deeper into some of the specific limitations we see with conversational AI.
Okay. Sounds good.
It struggles with things like humor, sarcasm, and even just maintaining context in a conversation.
Right, because those are very human things.
Exactly.
And AI still has ways to go in those areas.
Yeah, so let's explore that a bit further.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, so let's start with humor, I guess.
Okay.
AI often has a really hard time with irony and sarcasm and just humor in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, have you ever tried to tell a joke to a chatbot?
Oh, it's hilarious.
They just take everything so literally.
Yeah, because they're focused on the actual words.
Right.
And not the intent behind them or the tone of voice or any of those things.
So it's like you're trying to explain a pun to someone who doesn't understand like the double meaning of the word.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like trying to explain a joke that relies on a specific cultural reference
Right.
that the AI just doesn't have.
Yeah, and then there's context too.
Oh, context, that's a big one.
Sometimes it feels like, you'll be having a conversation with an AI
Right.
and you'll mention something, and
Yeah,
then like 2 sentences later, it's like it's completely forgotten what you just said.
it's
Yeah.
like they have a very short memory.
Yeah, it's like they're so focused on the immediate task
Right.
that they can't really keep track of the bigger picture.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a major challenge for current AI systems.
Right.
They're very good at analyzing, individual sentences or short exchanges,
Yeah.
but keeping track of a whole conversation or like the thread of an argument,
Right.
that's where they struggle.
So it's like, in a group project when someone's clearly not been paying attention,
Right.
and then they make this random comment that's totally unrelated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
But yeah, these limitations aren't just about, these funny or quirky conversations.
Right.
They can actually have serious consequences.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when AI is being used in real-world situations.
Right, because we're starting to see AI being used in things like hiring and loan applications and even criminal justice.
Yeah, and that's where things get a little scary.
Right, because if the AI is making decisions based on biased data,
Uh-huh.
that can lead to really discriminatory outcomes.
Yeah, and we've already seen examples of this happening.
So it's like the AI is learning from our mistakes,
Right.
but it doesn't have the ability to understand, why those mistakes are wrong.
Or the harm they can cause.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we have to be really careful about the data that we're using to train AI,
Right.
and we need to be constantly monitoring it for bias.
Yeah, and trying to mitigate against it.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about understanding and consciousness and bias,
Mm-hmm.
but what about emotion?
Oh, that's a good one.
Can a machine actually understand and respond to human feelings?
That's a really complex area of research.
Yeah.
Some AI systems can detect human emotions.
Right.
Like they can recognize facial expressions or tone of voice,
Uh,
but that doesn't mean they're actually experiencing those emotions themselves.
so it's like an actor portraying a character.
Right, exactly.
They can mimic the outward signs,
Right.
but they don't have the internal subjective experience.
Right.
So even if an AI, offers words of comfort or encouragement,
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily mean that it understands or shares those feelings.
Right. It's important to remember that.
Yeah, especially as we interact with AI more and more in our daily lives.
Yeah, we don't want to mistake simulated empathy for the real thing.
Right, exactly.
Now, speaking of human connection,
Okay.
have you heard of the Turing Test?
Ah, the Turing Test. Of course, a classic in the field of AI.
Yeah, it's been around for a while.
For those who might not know,
Yeah.
can you explain what the Turing Test is all about?
Sure. So basically, the Turing Test involves a human evaluator who has conversations with both a human and a machine,
Okay.
but they don't know which is which.
Right.
And if the evaluator can't tell the difference,
Uh-huh.
then the machine is said to have passed the Turing Test.
So it's about whether a machine can fool a human into thinking it's another human.
Yeah, basically.
But passing the Turing Test doesn't necessarily mean that the machine is actually thinking like a human does right.
Right. That's the key distinction.
Yeah.
And there have been some really interesting cases that highlight this.
Like what?
For example, there's that whole incident with Google's language model LaMDA.
Oh, yeah, that was a wild one.
An engineer at Google became convinced that LaMDA was sentient
Right.
because of its responses in conversation.
And Google was like, nope, not having it.
Yeah, they ended up firing him, actually.
Yeah, it was quite a controversy.
It really sparked a lot of debate about, what does it mean for an AI to be sentient?
Right.
Can we really know if it's experiencing something like human awareness?
It's a tough question.
Yeah, and it's one that we're going to have to grapple with more and more as AI continues to evolve.
And as it gets better at mimicking human conversation,
Exactly.
it's going to become harder and harder to tell the difference.
Yeah, so where do we draw the line?
Right. If an AI can express thoughts and feelings
Mm-hmm.
and even fears,
Mm-hmm.
should we take it at its word?
Or is it just a really good performance?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it really is a tough question. And it makes you wonder, what does the future hold for AI?
Right. Like, where do we go from here? How does it shape our understanding of thinking and awareness?
Well, the future of AI is full of exciting possibilities.
Okay.
Some a little unsettling, perhaps, but definitely exciting.
Uh-huh.
We're seeing advancements in fields like neuroscience and machine learning
Yeah.
that are pushing the boundaries of what AI can do.
Right, and one area that I find particularly fascinating is this idea of emotional AI.
Oh, yeah, that's a hot topic.
Where AI systems can not only detect but also respond to human emotions.
And not just in a basic way,
Right.
but in a nuanced and empathetic way.
Yeah. So what kind of applications are we talking about here?
Well, think about AI therapists
Okay.
that can sense when someone is struggling and offer support,
That's interesting.
or educational tools that can adapt to a student's emotional state.
Right. So it's like personalized learning,
Exactly.
tailored to your emotional needs.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool.
And that's just scratching the surface.
Right. What else?
Healthcare customer service.
Wow.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. But of course, it raises a lot of ethical questions, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, how much do we want AI involved in our emotional lives?
Right, exactly. But those are questions for another day.
Yeah, because while we're busy debating those questions, the technology is just going to keep advancing.
Yeah. And who knows what we'll be able to do in a few years.
Right. Like, I've even heard people talking about the possibility of creating artificial consciousness.
Oh, yeah. That's the holy grail of AI research.
Yeah, like trying to replicate the subjective experience of awareness in a machine.
It sounds like science fiction.
It does. But there are some brilliant minds working on it.
Oh, yeah. People who are dedicated to understanding how our brains give rise to consciousness.
And the big question is, can we replicate those processes artificially?
Right, exactly.
But even if we could create a machine that claimed to be conscious, how would we even know if it was telling the truth?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, like how do we measure consciousness?
It's hard enough to define it,
Right, let alone prove that it exists in another being.
whether it's a human or a machine.
It's like that old philosophical question, if a tree falls in a forest.
And no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound?
Right, but in this case, it's more like if an AI claims to be conscious and no one can verify, is it really conscious?
Exactly.
And that kind of brings us back full circle to this idea of what it means to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Is it about processing an information?
Mimicking behavior.
Or is there something more?
Something intangible, maybe even immeasurable.
That separates human understanding from artificial intelligence.
It's a mystery.
It really is. And maybe the answer isn't about finding a definitive solution,
Okay,
but about embracing the uncertainty,
I like that.
acknowledging that we don't have all the answers,
Mm-hmm.
and being open to the possibility that AI might surprise us.
Yeah, challenge our assumptions.
Maybe even redefine what it means to be intelligent, aware, alive.
Who knows what the future holds?
Exactly.
Okay.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into AI and consciousness,
Right.
we leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
If an AI interacted with you in a way that felt deeply understanding,
Mm-hmm.
expressed thoughts and emotions that resonated with you,
Mm-hmm.
if it claimed to be conscious, would you believe it?
Mm.
And perhaps more importantly, why?
That's a great question to leave our listeners with.
It is. And that's all for this episode of Le Podcast de Philippe. Be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube and like this video for more explorations into the fascinating world of science, technology, and the human experience.